Geopolitical Free Agents podcast, and we are back live and ready for our Wednesday episode. What's going on, Mike?
What's going on, brother? A lot of stuff going on these days.
Oh man, crazy packed. It's crazy packed. This was a much better day for me this week because normally my Wednesdays I'm like running up against the wall trying to get done in time to get prepped, but this was a better day. But for you, I think it was even better because you came through one of the best towns in all of America today.
Good old Refugio, Texas.
The great town of Refugio, Texas.
You could blink and pretty much miss it.
Hey man, we got at least the one extra stoplight since I graduated. So we coming up, man. Every 20 years, I think we add a stoplight. So
that's progress, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you were down in South Texas checking out the damage. So if those of you that don't know, we had Hurricane Hanna come through and it hit a little bit south of Corpus. You were saying that Corpus wasn't looking too bad.
Yeah, Corpus didn't look too bad. I know some areas south of Corpus got hit a little harder. So it was a category 1. On the lower end of the spectrum. So, but it still did some damage, but still early in hurricane season.
Yeah, absolutely. My mom stays just south of Corpus north of Corpus. And she basically was telling me that the leaves were blowing off the trees, but it wasn't like old leaves. Like these were fresh green leaves that were just blown straight off the tree. A couple limbs, things like that knocked down, but nothing real bad. And so I was thankful for that, but I wasn't sure because, didn't know if that thing was going to turn and head straight for her or what. So was happy to see that it came out pretty good in that area. Hurt the McAllen and, that area down there kind of got hit a little harder. So hopefully everything is looking up and up on that end. I've heard like the Lions Club and some of those organizations are going down there to help out soon as well. So hopefully get a good recovery. August,
September is when the season usually spikes. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with all this COVID stuff going on. If any part of the Gulf Coast takes a direct hit from a major hurricane, it's going to be a shit show.
Yeah, with Harvey, it was a lot of people migrating to hotel rooms, stuff like that. So that whole concept with, a pandemic going on, that completely changes the math on it and how that actually works out. So it's going to be interesting to see, man, how that really plays out in the event that something does happen. Do you think I don't know. How do you think, just from disaster recovery aspect, how do you think we actually navigate those waters if that does happen?
It's a tough one. States are having a hard time dealing with this COVID situation in the first place when it comes to the economy and money and funding things. I think the federal government is just gonna have to turn the money spigot on if it happens. So
it's interesting because I remember where was it? I think something happened in Florida, South Carolina, somewhere on the East Coast. And I remember Trump saying that, the federal government shouldn't have to keep paying for these towns that are on this coast and that sort of thing. And I think that kind of changed with Corona because we're looking at another stimulus check. We had mentioned it on Sunday's episode about a potential for one coming out, and they've announced the broad strokes of it. And so the $600 unemployment benefit has been reduced down to $200, which I know that was one of the big sticklers for the Republican side. And the initial one was that it was incentivizing people to stay on unemployment as opposed to finding work. And so I think largely that was their desire, was to reduce that. But it was something I saw a friend post And he mentioned if you've been on unemployment for, I guess it's what, been 4 months now, or any time during here, and he said if you weren't saving for that unemployment to run out, which is supposedly this Sunday, then that's your fault. And I think a lot of that has been missed. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I think a lot of that has been missed in what we're doing in terms of just as a country, just as people in this country. I think we've been missing that idea of no safety net. And I think that this is kind of giving people another false sense of security that we have a safety net. Like the government's going to come through and provide something on that front. Do you think mentally, like we kind of recover from that safety net aspect, or do you think it creates more of a dependency than what we already have, which is a pretty strong one?
No, I don't think we're going to recover at all. Unfortunately, we're figuring out pretty quick that there's really no way out of this fiscal problem that the government's in and the country's in. So, coronavirus has essentially pulled the curtain back, and so they're going to have to keep handing money out, and they're just going to keep fighting over how much it is they're going to hand out at any given time. So, I think they've opened up Pandora's box. You got Republicans right now fighting over whether or not to give people unemployment benefits, and if they do, how much money they're going to get. But there's really no stopping it at this point. The jobs, a lot of these jobs, they're just not going to come back. So, entire industries are gonna end up going out of business. So,
right.
What are you gonna do, right? At this point, it's like, what are you gonna do? Are you just, it's a catch-22. You can try to act fiscally responsible, which, anybody that's been paying attention to what the government's been doing over the years, both on the Republican side and the Democratic side, knows that they haven't been fiscally responsible. So trying to make it seem like you're trying to be responsible now just isn't going to fly, right?
Absolutely.
Or you can let people, go without being able to pay, for basic necessities, food, rent, and all these things, and the economy is just going to go into a massive recession, depression if you do that. So they're pretty much stuck. They're going to have to keep giving people money and benefits, and which is going to, which is going to create this problem where people are going to get so used to it, like you said, that if you ever try to take it away, it's just not going to work, right? You're going to create so much anger and political turmoil that whoever's in office, and if you try to do it, it's just going to be an automatic. You're just going to get whiplash.
Right. So is speaking in terms of like somebody campaigning saying we're going to take this thing away, and all of a sudden that's a no-go because people are going to be like, nah, man, I want my money, sort of thing.
Yeah. There's just no way that they're going to be able to take it away. Unfortunately, that's the answer, right? You can't. The only reason we can get away with it is because we have the reserve currency, right? And we can print as much money as we want, and we don't reap the inflation whirlwind that most other countries would reap with their own currencies if they did it. So we can kind of get away with it at this point. The Federal Reserve's, made it perfectly clear that they're going to continue to, extend their lending programs, keep interest rates at 0%, and try and stimulate the economy with free money until somehow the economy turns around, but it's just not going to happen. It's just, they're going to run into, and they're already running into it right now, because you're seeing things like gold and silver and cryptocurrencies taking off, because everybody's starting to really realize that there's no way, they're backed into a corner. There's really no way out for them. They're essentially dead set on destroying the dollar. And so, that's going to be the cycle that we're in right now, man. This next stimulus program that they're coming out with, I think they're going to reauthorize another $1,200 check for everybody. And then you've got the unemployment benefits that they're going to extend again. It's like we said earlier on one of the other podcasts. It's gonna be funny when, however many months from now, we have the same conversation, because this stimulus package runs out, and then they go right back to arguing about the next one.
Yeah.
How much that one's gonna be, right?
Yeah.
I don't even know who's gonna be in office by then, Trump or Biden or whoever, but you can guarantee that however many months down the road, we're gonna have this conversation again.
Yeah, no doubt. And then if you think about it, Christmas is coming up, so they're going to use that, families can be getting evicted in Christmas and this sort of thing. And yeah, man. You're right. I didn't even think about timing wise of a few months from now, and then they leave session, right? And they take off in October for the rest of the year or something like that, or November. They leave Congress and go out. So it's definitely interesting. Along those lines, we have an article here. I'll pull that up real quick about the news today from the Fed chair, Powell. And so the Federal Reserve left interest rates unchanged near zero in its monetary policy update Wednesday. Once again, it reiterated that the economic recovery will depend on the path of the virus, which is pretty much what you were saying here, is that we don't really know what's going on, and we're going to end up still kind of stagnating. And so the central bank said the ongoing public health crisis will weigh heavily on economic activity, employment, and inflation in the near term, and poses considerable risk to the economic outlook over the medium term. I saw something earlier that Powell has said as well. Actually, this quote may be part of what he was saying, was what the data shows is that the pace of the recovery looks like it slowed since the cases began that spike in June. And they said on balance, it looks like the data are pointing to the slowing in pace in the recovery. And so I saw earlier another quote, kind of what Powell was saying about it. And he was basically saying, like, the growth of the economy slowed to less than what the economy was growing prior to the pandemic. And so the growth of that is, and I think Trump, actually, to his credit, was right a few months ago. He's basically said it's going to be rough for the rest of this year. It didn't catch much news because, him saying something like that doesn't fit narratives, but it is definitely going to be rough this year. And he mentioned a recovery next year. And I think that's about the earliest we could possibly see anything, because we just don't know, like he said, Powell said, we don't know where this virus is going. So I was talking to a buddy yesterday about the recovery as well, in terms of if they had a vaccine, would you take it? I think there's a lot of people that be like, I don't know, let somebody else take that first. Like, let's
yeah. I'm not gonna walk to the front of the line and be the guinea pig.
Yeah, like, let's see. Let's somebody else take that shot first. Because there's all this misinformation, there's disinformation, and then there's some truth somewhere in there, and it's just very difficult to sift through what's what. So I think even if they say right now cases have stopped, there are 0 cases in America, I think, or at least for me specifically, I still would want my kids to remote, virtual learn. I still wouldn't be comfortable. So from an economic standpoint, you got to think that people aren't going to be interested in going back to work immediately if they have to now try to go into the office versus doing remote. What do you think about that in terms of even after it seems like we're out, how we kind of recover from that and how the economy responds?
Well, the only way for them to jumpstart the economy again is for them to keep printing more money and deficit spend. Like this whole thing, like them, the whole idea of an economic recovery is predicated on the Federal Reserve continuing its lending program, keeping interest rates at zero, and the federal government spending basically an unlimited amount of money. So there's no recovery without them doing that or attempting to do that or continuing to do that like they are right now. They're just going to do it in increments. And so, unfortunately, this is going to end up backfiring on them. There's not going to be a recovery. That's the problem. This is not going to be a recovery. I mean, we were talking about the second wave, like however many months ago, right? Like
that was like
we
April,
could see,
I think.
we could see the second wave coming, right? Somehow the Federal Reserve missed the second wave coming, and how that was going to negatively impact, this recovery process. And now they're making it sound like they didn't really see it coming. We're going to have to keep interest rates low, and like it was just like you couldn't see it coming a mile away.
Right.
So there's just not going to be a recovery. That's what most people really need to wrap their heads around. They're going to try everything they can. They're going to throw as much, like I told you, however many months ago, they're going to throw as much money as they can at this thing, and they're going to fail, right? Tens of trillions of dollars.
This one is 2 trillion, right? So the first one was 3.
Well, no, the Democrats wanted it to be 3, and then the Republicans wanted it to be 1. And so what they end up agreeing on ultimately, we still have yet to see what the actual number is going to be.
Oh, you're saying this one here, the current one?
Yeah, this current one that they're trying to figure out right now. We still have to see what the actual number is going to be.
Right. But the first one was 3. This one will be some other trillion, 1 to 3. And then
I think the first one was 2.3.
Okay, something like
so
that.
Many trillions these days, you know what I mean?
And here's the thing, like it's so many zeros that people are just like 2 trillion. Like they just throw it out like it's nothing. And it's $2 trillion.
Even $1 trillion is that's more than the entire bailout package in 2008, and now they're just doing it like every few months, so
that's crazy.
All Democrats and Republicans have no problem spending the money. They're just fighting over where that money's going, like we said before. So, there's plenty of pork in this new stimulus package. There's gonna be plenty of pork, plenty of wasted money, plenty of stuff being spent on non-related things when it comes to coronavirus. So they're going to waste as much money as they can, and try and get away with it. All this fighting is about political leverage. Let's fight as long as we can and piss enough people off to the point to where we can just pass something that's got all sorts of stuff stuffed into it, to some sort, and put whatever tab they want on, because people are just going to be so fed up that they need to make a decision. They're just going to it's not going to be 3 this time, guys. We'll make it 1.4, and then 6 months from now we can argue about another 2 trillion.
Exactly. This is what I say in terms of like general politics, and it's just we're seeing it on I guess you could say like a very high profile case / scenario, right? Camera's blurring. Let's see. Get this to fix. All right. So we're getting this to, in a very high profile scenario here. And basically what we're seeing is because it's such a big deal, we end up in this case where we get a hyper focus on this one specific thing and we can see it playing out in real time. And I tell people all the time, these parties, they're not really that much different. Like they're really not. They're all trying to achieve a specific goal, which is one, staying in power. That's why we can cause issues like, or not issues, but we can, certain things like, let's say the teacher strikes that happen. Like they're not looking out for like, improving teacher pay, and until their constituents do something that makes them, like forces them to make some change because they may lose power, right? So they end up having to play these games where they're like, yeah, I can't let you win. So I need something in there so I can go to my people and say, look what I did. I did this thing, and I do talk to this with a cousin who's also a Trump supporter. He likes to talk about the First Step Act, with the prison reform and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, but that was started in 2015. The Republicans just blocked it. They wouldn't let it happen. And then they bring it back up in 2017, I think it was, or maybe 18, and they passed it, right? And so we're seeing it like now with the microscope with the stimulus bill, that they're all doing that same exact thing. It's like, no, we don't want this much unemployment because it goes against our values, quote unquote. And no, we want this much unemployment because not doing it goes against our values. And we should cancel rent, and we should do these things, and we should not. And so it's a bunch of, positioning, for their own common good, in my opinion. And I think largely this is what drove me to the, political free agent aspect, not the podcast, but just being a free agent, was that it's wasting our time, dude. Like all this fighting and infighting, like it's wasting our time. Like they're doing all this stuff and the progress that's needed, we're not doing it. Like, so, all right, let's say this one comes out at another 2 trillion-ish. That's $4 trillion. You think we could have fixed all the issues with veterans? Like at the drop of a hat, if we wanted to? Like if they really wanted to fix homelessness, or if they want to fix, inner city issues, they really could have done this at any point. But now they're like forced to do these things that, help impact the economy, quote unquote, to try to recover. And I just think it wastes our time. But I want to transition to how we as people protect against this sort of scenario, because as we see, they're going to do what they want to do, right? Like they're going to create this money whenever they want. They're going to put it wherever they want to put it. You may or may not get some. So what are solutions that we could use to actually protect ourselves against this? Aside from, budgeting 6 months of reserves in your bank account, cash on hand, that sort of thing. We have other options like gold, crypto, those sort of things. So talk to us, Mike, about ways that we can utilize those to kind of help protect us against this in the future.
Yeah. So, step one is kind of, just to reiterate, step one is to really realize that they've got no other options other than to keep printing money and going deeper into debt, right? That's it. That's all they got. And once you realize that, you have to realize that you have to remove yourself from that system and protect your wealth and your future wealth somehow, right? And just kind of transition yourself outside of them destroying what is the dollar and essentially the country, because this whole thing, the country's disintegrating right now because the country is financially falling apart.
Absolutely.
And so, the best way to do that, one of the best ways to do that is, basically investing in what are considered insurance policies or stores of value that will transition through them financially destroying the system. And traditionally that's been gold and silver. And now we've got a more technological based form of doing that in cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. So, you know, the system, see, the thing is more and more people are really starting to wake up to the fact that they're destroying the system and there's no other way out for them. And so now what you're really starting to see, especially over this last week, is a psychological turning where a lot of people are really starting to realize it, and more people are moving into gold, silver, and cryptocurrencies, and the price is reflecting that right now. Gold and silver are up big. Gold's hitting all-time highs. It broke 2,000 somewhere around like $1,960 or something like that right now. Silver, went from like $14. Now it's at like $24 here in the last, couple months. And cryptocurrencies right now are on the rise too. And so you're just seeing a lot of people start to really pay attention to what's going on and putting their money. I mean, some of it's going to be speculation. People that don't really know or are new to this space, but a lot of it you're seeing big money players start to realize this fundamental truth about the fact that they have no other options, and even they're moving into gold and silver and crypto. So it's going to be interesting. The next 6 to 12 months. We're pretty much all the signs appear to show that we're in a new. We're right at the beginning of a new bull market in all three of those assets. And it's just going to be interesting to see as they continue to print money and go deeper into debt, and the economy continues to essentially fall apart, society continues to fall apart. We go through selection season. It's going to be interesting to see the wild ride that they're going to have on the way up, and what happens all the way through next year.
So for those, I've had conversations recently with multiple people, interestingly, about Bitcoin, and they don't have a background in Bitcoin, in finance, and they were just trying to understand like just the general idea of, well, I don't have like Bitcoin, as we showed, is at 11,000 a Bitcoin right now, and they asked like, well, I can't afford, a Bitcoin. Sort of thing. And then also the same thing with gold, like they hear the 1900 and that sort of aspect. So speak to the fractional aspect of being able to buy these things and how they protect us from that inflation that happens with the dollar.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so this is all I can speak to is what I do, right? I take a certain amount of money that I feel comfortable with every month. And like a normal person would invest that in their 401k or in some sort of savings plan, maybe investing in stock. I'd buy micro transactions of, let's say, Bitcoin or, a different type of cryptocurrency or gold or silver. I mean, you can buy an ounce of silver, you can buy a 1 gram bar of gold. You don't have gold is what, $1,900 an ounce? Not everybody can afford $1,900 an ounce, but that doesn't mean that you can't spend $50 a month buying a gram of gold and accumulating that over time like you would with any other kinds of form of savings, right? The same goes with Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin's $11,000 per Bitcoin, but each Bitcoin breaks down into 7 decimal places. So you can buy $50 of Bitcoin every month if you want to, and get a fraction of Bitcoin, and you start accumulating that. And as the current financial system falls apart, right? And as these assets grow in value, you're transitioning your money and your wealth outside of the current system into these other asset classes that are going to maintain their value and increase in value as time goes on. So you don't have to, like, people really need to to realize that they don't have to buy one full unit of any of these things. You can buy micro, you can do micro transactions, right? So you can go onto websites that sell, reputable websites that sell silver and gold, and you can buy a small amount. You just have to be smart about it, right? You don't necessarily pile in $5,000 one day buying bulk, right? Just dollar cost average, and transition a small amount of money that you feel comfortable with every month or whatever into an asset and accumulate it over time, right? And that's how you keep your wealth as the system falls apart. So,
And I think the DCAing is dollar cost averaging is also good, because from just from what your investment is, it's hard to hit those targets on the up and the down, and that kind of averages out. So if you buy it at $5 and you buy it at $10 and you kind of averaged out 7.5, whatever, it kind of helps protect in that sense. So from the gold market perspective, or the physical market, when you're buying those, you're getting actual physical pieces of gold.
correct.
And so those things aren't beholden to, some fictitious system that dictates, or you can't lose it unless you lose it, like physically lose it, in that sense. So I know a lot of people think, and I've had a lot of people asking me about the stock market, and they're like, well, I want to get into the stock market. And I think it's, if you're not familiar with these things, is that you look at the stock market and you think that dictates how good the economy is doing. But the stock market, was it maybe a month ago, I think, we hit an all-time high for daily gains. And it was like big news, like, oh, the stock market had the highest level of growth, I don't know, since the Great Depression or something, or since the 80s or whatever. All in all, there was like 40 million people unemployed at the time. And so the stock market isn't giving you a clear indication. And what happened in 2008 with the crash, whenever it crashed, the 401ks that everybody had saved up, all of that, they were in the stock market, and the stock market just went through the floor, and so did the 401ks. And so all of your value that you have built up and you felt good about your retirement income is gone, because the stock market, based on emotion, crumbled immediately. So this is a bit of diversification as well, right?
Well,
Kind of
yeah.
helps.
So here's the thing about the stock market. The stock market might keep going up, because if the Federal Reserve's out there supporting the market,
right,
printing trillions of dollars to keep the stock market up, you may see the stock market continue to go up. The point really is, though, is that if you want to invest in the stock market, you've got to go through some sort of brokerage company like an E-Trade or something like
your
that.
favorite, Robinhood.
Yeah, or so you're really right now, if you're investing in the stock market, you're gambling, like high risk gambling, in my opinion. And
right.
so and then you have to remember that at the time you want to cash out, you've got to go through some third party to do that, and then you're cashing out into dollars, right? And those dollars are becoming worth less and less as they print trillions and trillions more. So the point of other assets like gold, silver, and Bitcoin is to remove yourself entirely from that system of dollars, right? Now there's different.
Which, to your point, to just interrupt real quick, brings up the thing that you brought up before about being a debt slave. Getting out of that debt-based system helps remove you from that. Go ahead, continue.
Essentially you're trying to transition yourself from an old system to a new system, because the old system is dying, right? And so, hey, by all means, I mean, I have friends that saw the lows in March in the stock market and piled into, airline stocks and have tripled their money. But, that's no different than going to the casino. If you ask me, just if you understand what's going on in the background, if you have a good idea of the macro, like background of, like we're talking about the Fed printing money, unlimited amounts of money, buying junk bonds, possibly going into negative interest rates, sooner or later, buying equities through BlackRock, the government's deficit spending that they're doing right now. If you have an idea of this macro background, then you should really understand that investing in the stock market right now is really just high risk gambling, which, if that's your risk appetite, you know what I mean? But I think more prudent people right now who are going through this coronavirus situation, if they're trying to actually save money and be wise with it, so that, if another shitstorm happens, they've got something to fall back on. I think you would be wiser to look into, these kinds of insurance policies and assets that will only go up in value given that environment. So.
Right. When I said I was talking to, I think I said earlier, I was talking to my niece, and one of the people I said I was talking to was my niece, and she was asking me, she was like, what is Bitcoin? So I started explaining to her Bitcoin, and she was like, in the stock market. And so I kind of explained the stock market, and her response to the stock market was, so it's gambling? I was like, pretty much. And so, once you start looking into that stuff, it's kind of clear and easy to see that you're basically just gambling.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I've said this before in the past. I mean, Bitcoin is a gamble on a particular type of future, right? A decentralized money future where you don't rely on governments or banks to dictate what the value of that money is. It's more of a free market verifiable system. If you want to gamble a portion of your wealth on a future like that, then Bitcoin is a gamble worth taking, as far as I'm concerned. Gold and silver, probably not so much of a gamble because they've got a 5,000-year track record.
And we're only off the gold standard several decades here. What, 5 decades?
Yeah, 71. So yeah. So I mean, I like to gamble, but for most people, I think, for most people, it's probably not really a good idea to gamble in the sense of, putting more money than you can afford to lose in something that you don't understand, right? It's taken me a long time to understand why I would take that risk, right? So you have to educate yourself on why you're taking that risk. Unless you do that.
Absolutely. And that's, one thing I say, I always tell people who ask about investing or anything like that. I'm not an expert by any means. But I always tell them, don't put anything in that you're not willing to lose. I don't care if it's $100 or $50. If you're not willing to say bye to that 50 or that 100, don't do it. You have to be willing to take that risk, because it's definitely a risk.
Well, and you have to educate yourself on how to protect it too.
Right.
Security is a big deal. I mean, traditionally that's what you let the banks do, is secure your money for you.
Right.
Look at what they've done with it. I mean.
Yep. I remember I remember one day we were talking and I said something about, keep my money in the bank to keep it protected. And you started breaking down all this stuff. And I was like, dang it, Mike. Now I feel like I need to take my money out. So with with that particular future, I think it's difficult for people to understand um, how that system may change. And that's why I bring up being off the gold standard, right? So if you were born, let's say you were born in the 50s, you grew up with the gold standard, and then all of a sudden it switched. And so from just a policy standpoint, it could change. But from a geopolitical standpoint, we've seen a lot of moves happening. I think we always see moves, but I think we've seen quite a few interesting ones in the last few years where countries are starting to leave America out of certain deals. They're starting to partner in ways that we didn't see before, which I believe we had talked about on Sunday. I think it was China and Iran who recently partnered. And there's a desire because the dollar hasn't been the currency, the global currency since, or I guess it was World War One. After that is when the dollar became like the global currency. So that could go.
Yeah.
World War II.
Yeah.
Okay, so that could change as well, right? So all this stuff is like 100 years old within that range, and so that could change. It hasn't always been that way, so it can definitely change. And so with these moves that are happening, I think personally that Bitcoin and the physical assets like that help protect against that sort of change. So that way, if the dollar does become or does stops being the global currency, that you can kind of protect yourself, right? Because you're not beholden to your money sitting in the dollar format. What do you think about that in terms of protecting that sort of future?
Yeah, I mean, when this whole thing falls apart, and it will, they're going to try and come up with some sort of new system, right? China, which is why there are countries like China and Russia and India and all these other countries are buying gold year after year. It's why Germany repatriated its gold a couple of years ago. And so they're, they know the writing's on the wall. And when whenever this current system falls apart and everything goes to shit, they're going to try and figure out a new way of a new form of global monetary system. And I think, a lot of people in the crypto space think that they're going to try and come up with some sort of digital system, their own form of digital money or crypto. I just don't see it. I just don't see him getting away with it, though. The internet is the thing is the internet is what is the key to all this, right? Information. Right. Human beings have access to information at a rate and that we've never had access to. So in order for them to pull the wool over everybody's eyes and try and shift things and get away with it again and kind of reset things, they would need everybody to kind of be in the dark about a lot of this stuff. And it's just not possible with the internet. There are just too many people. There are too many people that are experts in these, when it comes to these things. There are too many people that have that are influencers and have awesome conversations that can connect with each other. That there's just no way for them to pull the wool over everybody's eyes. The only way they can do it, or try to do it, in my opinion, is to have this whole thing blow up and be able to blame it on something other than it being their fault. So I don't know what that something would be coming out of left field. Right now it's the coronavirus, but we've talked about this before. I'm just kind of sitting back waiting for some sort of geopolitical black swan to happen, or some sort of terrorist attack to happen. Something that they can blame on the system kind of finally going over the cliff, and them having to step in and kind of come to the rescue and change the system and roll out this new way of doing things as far as money goes. And that's the only way that they can get away with it, is by being able to shift the blame onto something else. Maybe we go to war with somebody, we get into conflict with China.
Yeah.
Maybe these chickens that come, finally come home to roost with the whole Soleimani assassination. There's a terrorist attack here in the United States. Something has to come out of left field. It's like a chair. One of the pegs, the one peg was coronavirus. The follow-on effects, or the other pegs, are how it's affecting the economy. And then there's going to be one final thing that kind of knocks the chair out from underneath everybody, and then they'll come in and with some sort of solution, right? The whole world will get together and figure out something. But I just don't think they'll be able to get away with it. People are starting to understand that Bitcoin is you don't have to trust in Bitcoin. You can verify. I
think that's the key.
Yeah, that's the key, right? There's no way to verify anything in the current system because they control it, right? And so, when this system finally falls apart, everybody's going to put so much value on being able to verify what it is that we're all like involved in, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And when you, so for people that don't know, so in short, without breaking down like all the internal cryptography aspects, but basically the transactions in Bitcoin exist on what's called a blockchain, and those transactions are verified. And so that's what, go ahead.
Yeah, every 10 minutes, the network verifies.
Right. Yep. And so that blockchain is public. You can kind of see it goes from this address to that address. And so in the vein of how money is shifting hands and that sort of thing, when it happens in the current US system, we have no idea what's going on. We don't really know what really is happening. If it was happening through Bitcoin, we would at least be able to see addresses where things exist and those sort of things. Wouldn't be able to necessarily know who owns it.
Right. You can verify the supply. That's
right.
really the crux of this whole thing is it's a supply of money issue when it's all said and done. The way the current system works is the supply of money has to exponentially increase over time because it's debt based, and in the system of Bitcoin, it's mathematically decreases the amount of money the new amount of money that comes into existence is decreasing. And so it's a fixed supply. So you can trust that there's nobody screwing around with the supply because you can verify the supply in existence. I mean,
and it's limited.
Right. You got people like, Dr. Mark Skidmore, at University of Michigan, I think, he did an audit of the DOD's own data and found $21 trillion. I mean, you don't even know where this money, you don't even know how much money exists out there, right? Like,
yes.
So it's just like, is anybody really going to trust governments or central banks, the IMF, the fucking, Bank of International Settlements, whoever these big money players and power brokers are, if they try and come out with some new system once this whole thing blows up? I don't think so. I mean,
I don't think so either. And I think even to your point about like the US trying to create their own currency, who's really going to trust that thing? Like, who's really going to trust the US created crypto?
I think this is where the fight's going to end up being. The fight is going to be between people who want to reinstitute a sound form of money that returns power to individual people and essentially breaks the chains of slavery. And they're going to be fighting against the people that have been in control of the system this whole time, as they try and transition into a new form of slavery, whatever that form of slavery is going to end up looking like. It's going to be it's an epic battle. I don't know who's going to win, but
yeah, no, I completely agree. And because just like we mentioned earlier, let's rewind it all the way back to the beginning, is that once you give somebody something, taking it away is a problem. And they basically have, the keys to the kingdom right now. So taking those keys away is going to be a problem. They're not going to like it. They're going to fight it.
This is why I think they have a vested interest in dividing the country. A divided country is a lot easier to, coming out with some sort of solution when the country's divided is probably a lot easier than, a country that's united in the same idea, right? And united in the idea of whose fault it actually is, right?
Yeah. Well, and to that point, I think that's largely another thing that I've been on the stump about for a while, was that they don't want us to know how the system actually works. They don't want us to really understand what's happening behind closed doors with these votes. And, even the ones that are public, they code them in a way that they speak about them, that they don't want us really to follow what's going on and why this is happening. Because if we do and we start voting, they start losing power. That's why they don't want all of America to vote. Like, that's the worst thing they could ever have, is all of America being conscious and voting.
Well, they don't. It's the real. Honestly, I think it's the real reason why they don't teach financial education from an early age on.
Absolutely.
Because, you teach a kid the way this system works, and he's going to look at you like, what? There's no way. Yeah. There's no way you could sell a kid on a system that's this fundamentally broken. They will see through that BS a mile away. And so that's,
I saw that with my son this week. I explained to him, I forgot what we were talking about, but we started talking through a little bit about the economics of something. I forgot specifically what it was. And he started asking questions and was like, that doesn't make sense. Like, why are they doing it that way? And he just, like you say, he just saw right through it and was like, well, that's dumb. Like, why would you do it like that? And I was like, that's how they're keeping power. They don't want everybody to know that kind of stuff. So, I think that's largely a big reason why we exist in this space, is to kind of help with that along that front. So, you have any closing thoughts, Mike? Anything you want to touch on before we close out?
I'm just excited. I'm just excited for this bull market that's getting kicked off right now. It's just man. I know there's a lot of people reaching out to me and, a couple of people that I know that have already been in this, this space, this gold, silver, Bitcoin space. And, do your research,
What's some of your best places for folks to research or resources?
Some of the best people in the space to listen to, obviously Max Kaiser, OG, Bitcoin Yoda.
RT.
He's got the Kaiser Report show on RT. Andreas Antonopoulos is a great person to listen to when it comes to Bitcoin. Gold and silver, I would recommend listening to Mike Maloney or Kitco News. There's a bunch of Real Vision. There's a lot of people out there. It's just start there, and you'll rabbit hole yourself down all sorts of different paths. You know what I mean? So
it definitely is a rabbit hole.
There's so many great people out there to listen to in the space, but I would start there. But you really just need to educate yourself on why Like, why would I invest, or why would I risk whatever money I have in these things? Like, why? Why would I do it? There's got to be a reason, right? It can't just be for you to make money. Okay, there needs to be a deeper, more fundamental, rooted reason in why these things would be the things to put your money in, right? And once you can answer why, you won't have any problems mentally, doing it, right? Like taking the risk will be a lot easier if you can answer for yourself, why am I doing it, right? Why does this make sense? So that's the first thing I tell a lot of people is figure out why. Figure out why first. Do some research, figure out why first. And then whenever it is that you figure that question out, it'll be a lot easier for you to mentally make the decision and take the leap. So there's plenty of reasons out there. It's not hard to find them. We talk about them all the time.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Man, this has been a great conversation as usual, man. I always like talking about this stuff with you, specifically because you have such a good, strong grasp on just geopolitics and finances in general, and especially the crypto space. So we're definitely going to have some links in the show notes. What's that?
I'm just a dumb grunt.
They're figuring out as you go, huh?
Yep.
Yeah. So we are the Political Free Agents, man. We do this twice a week, Wednesdays, 7 p.m., Sundays, 2 p.m., whenever Sundays aren't getting in our way because, life happens. But catch us on politicalfreeagents.com. You can check out the live tab there to actually get to locate our YouTube channel or subscribe directly from YouTube, and hit the like button as well. That way you can get notified every time we go live. Also, keep an eye out on our social media at PFA Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And we are out. Catch you on Sunday, folks.